Hello, fellow Star Trek fans. Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Clonestar Podcast. I'm, of course, your host, Mike Overton, and joining me in my co-host seat this week is my dear friend, Mike number two. Mike number two, how are you doing this week?
After 5,000 hours, we have arrived. 5,000 hours in Star Trek Online, and now we get to speak to them and demand answers.
I know, only 5,000 hours, hey?
Only! How dare I have a life?
Well, in this episode, we're going to be diving into the design legacy of Star Trek Online, specifically the brand new Timeless Legacy ship bundle with two incredible guests who helped bring it to life. Joining us is Thomas Marrone, art director of Star Trek Online, and, well, the creative force behind many of the ships that we know and love, including this one here. Alongside him, we're thrilled to welcome Nate Simpson, concept artist and 3D artist for the original Starfleet Command, and now helping bridge the past and the present and bringing it through in this nice new collaboration, which I have to say I really enjoyed. These ships are gorgeous, and I might have got all three of them already and spent way too much money doing it, but that's completely irrelevant. Guys, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves. So, Thomas, if you want to go first.
Sure. I'm Thomas Marrone, art director for Star Trek Online. I've worked on the game for almost 15 years at this point. I started out as a UI artist on the game, then moved on to do 3D ship art. That was always my first love with Star Trek, is the starships, right? The starships in Star Trek are characters in their own right. And so it was a thrill and a joy for me to start building the 3D models of the ships in the game. I went from there to move on to doing into a leadership role of the lead ship and UI artist, and eventually became art director. It was also my privilege and pleasure to contribute work to Star Trek Picard. I created the model of the Enterprise F, update, which originally did start in Star Trek Online, was originally designed by Adam Isle and Adam Williams. But when it came time that they wanted to feature in Star Trek Picard, we had to build a whole brand new model with an updated, polished design, and that was an incredible opportunity for me to do that as well. But I'm a lifelong Star Trek fan. I not to date Nate or anything, but when I was in high school, I was playing Starfleet Command II. So I'm super honored to bring some of those wonderful ships from Starfleet Command and Starfleet Command II in the Star Trek Online. And now I want to pass it over to you, Nate, so that you can introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Nate Simpson. Yes, I feel old. I believe this is my 32nd year in video games. In fact, I'm sure we'll talk about it, but Thomas reached out to me a few weeks ago. I had no awareness that any of the stuff I had worked on, 25 years ago, was still in the creative mix and was still being refreshed and brought back to life for Star Trek Online. So it was very, very exciting to see this trailer, this beautiful high-res trailer with my Ark Royal in it. Now that was something I've always been very, very excited about. So this is going to be a real walk down memory lane for me. Things were very, very different in the games industry in the year 2000.
Yep.
Since then, I've worked on a number of games. Most recently, I was the creative director for Kerbal Space Program 2, which probably has a similar space enthusiast overlap to the world of Star Trek. I remember when I was working on Star Trek, having to meet some pretty stringent requirements for Paramount. They're quite persnickety, as I'm sure you all know, in terms of that's not where the impulse engines go, that sort of thing. So, and similar types of requirements for Kerbal Space Program. So I'm used to getting my knuckles lightly wrapped for accuracy reasons. But yeah, looking forward to talking about all that stuff.
I mean, it's not like Star Trek fans are picky or anything.
No.
We've got to remember, in the year 2000, the internet was a baby, and you actually wouldn't necessarily get dogpiled with angry fans if you made a mistake. You often didn't know you had made a mistake until much later.
But back then, someone would have written a letter or sent a fax. Now it's
Yeah.
social media, and you get bombarded and bombarded and bombarded with comments, shall we say?
Yeah, that's right.
So, Thomas, this goes to you then. What was the creative vision behind the Timeless Legacy bundle, and why now, and why these ships?
Man, that's a great question, and I want to we're talking about the Timeless Legacy bundle, but I'm really excited to have Nate here, who worked on the Ark Royal originally for Starfleet Command II, right, Nate? That was in the second one.
Yeah.
And that was in the 50th anniversary bundle that we did earlier this year. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that, because I do want to talk about that work too, and really pick Nate's brain about some of that stuff. But to your question about the Timeless Legacy bundle, it really does start with the 50th anniversary bundle, because that bundle was all about the motion picture era aesthetic of Starships, which is my favorite era personally. The ships that it really started with Matt Jeffries. He was going to work on a new Star Trek TV show called Star Trek Phase 2. He was splitting his time, I think, between Little House on the Prairie and this Star Trek Phase 2 TV show they were going to spin up. And so they're going to modernize, make a new version of the Enterprise for this show. So he started developing a new version of the Enterprise for that. Eventually, Matt couldn't work on they canceled Phase 2 because they wanted to turn it into Star Trek the Motion Picture, and Matt's work kind of eventually found its way onto the desk of the people working on the movie, and finally landed on Andy Probert's desk. And I think I forget the other gentleman who worked on the original motion picture refit design of the Enterprise. Andy Probert did a lot of that work though, and that kind of defined a whole era of Star Trek ship design, starting with Star Trek the Motion Picture. Really got fleshed out in the Search for Spock, with the Grissom, the Excelsior Earth Space Dock, and then and fans really, and I think part of I'm going all over the place, but that era really caught on for I think folks kind of our age,
Yep.
who grew up with those films. Some of it I think was because there was no internet, or the internet was very young, and so a lot of people were making, like, I have some wonderful like fan publications where people made like draftsman drawings of their own starships from that era. Remember that this was all when those movies came out. There was no Star Trek: The Next Generation, right? Star Trek: Next Generation didn't happen until I think after or like right before around Star Trek V. So all, the original series and the films, and that was it as far as Star Trek. And so there's a lot of like an explosion of fan creativity around this era of the motion picture designs, the uniforms, the starships and everything. And so that's really near and dear to my heart. And it's the classic kind of Art Deco aesthetic,
Yeah.
that created some, very clean, very like they're machines, but there's a lot of grace and beauty to them as well, right? They really live up to that feeling of being a character as opposed to just a rocket ship or a boat. So anyway, so we did the 50th anniversary bundle, but and we did the Ark Royal, the Kerala, which was a motion picture interpretation of a ship from Star Trek Discovery. We did the Atlas. No, we didn't do the Atlas. Sorry, excuse me. The Theseus from IDW, a TMP version of that. And we did the Shangri-La, Bill Krause's amazing Shangri-La, which actually inspired the Enterprise G from Star Trek Picard. And we did the I'm blanking. The got to go through the thing in my. I know there's one more that I'm missing, but the point is that we did all of these amazing TMP era ships and the Ark Royal, of course, the Ark Royal, from Starfleet Command, which I had always. This was that. I got to say, Nate, the Ark Royal is one of my favorite Starship ships ever from anything, and it was, when I kind of got the okay to go ahead and do this motion picture era bundle, and a salute to that era. We had already done, all of the canon ships. We already done the Excelsior a long time ago, the Enterprise, the Constitution class, the Reliant, and the Miranda class, all that stuff. So like when we're doing these bundles, we have to find like, well, what are some of the other things we can do that people are still going to recognize, that people will still connect with, right? And so that's why I wanted to go back to the Ark Royal from Starfleet Command, the Shangri-La from Picard, find these things that people are part of that era that people will recognize and be like, oh, hey, I remember that. That was really cool. I'd love to see it in a new context, in a new Trek game, and so we did that in the motion picture bundle. But there were still ships we hadn't gotten to do, that I still really wanted to do, and so that was the Okinawa. That was a TMP version of the Ranger, and the Proxima from Star Trek Legacy. We had an artist on the team who really wanted to do the Proxima from another game, Star Trek Legacy, and so that's kind of where we started with the Timeless Legacy. Was like, well, what didn't get to do in the 50th anniversary bundle? And so they honed in onto these ships, and then I know I've been rambling for a while, but from there it was just, okay, now that we know that these are the ships we want to do that we didn't get to do last time, how do we set this bundle apart from the motion picture bundle? Because we already did that, right? And so it was figuring out the identity. And so for the Timeless Legacy bundle, instead of just focusing on the motion picture era, we wanted to do variants that were for like the original series and the Stowe era as well. And that worked really well because the Proxima from Star Trek Legacy has a original series version, motion picture version, and then we made the Pollux as a brand new Stowe era version. Same thing for the Ranger and the Okinawa as well. We could really expand on that and lean into that, like, this is through the eras of Star Trek in this Timeless Legacy bundle.
So why now then?
I mean, some of the question is, I think I kind of talked about a little bit there, where it's a sense of like, you're looking for stuff that people are going to be excited to get, and
right.
And they're going to be right. Like, so it's kind of, we primed the pump with the Heritage bundle last year, where we got to do the Typhon, the Premonition, and the Achilles, and then people, when we did that, they were like, oh, well, when are you going to do the Ark Royal? When are you going to do the Okinawa? All these are the Proxima, all these other ships from Star Trek gaming. And, I loved playing those games, and they meant a lot to me. And so now I'm in a position where I can pay homage to that. I can pay tribute to that. I can keep that work alive and in the sort of like Star Trek zeitgeist of Star Trek Online, for whatever that's worth. And so I just, it just seemed like a good thing to like build off that momentum and continue it forward.
Got you.
Yeah.
Okay, no, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Do you want to jump to question 3? Because question 2 is not going to be relevant.
Yeah. Well, was there a particular design challenge in updating a late 90s video game shape for today's players and visuals? So obviously we're children of the 90s and the early 2000s, and we played these games to death. You mentioned the Typhon from Star Trek Invasion. I think I worn out the disc playing that game. So when that was introduced, I was like, yes! It was like my childhood came back, and then we saw the Ark Royal come back from Starfleet Command, and tears were in my eyes. But obviously these were old graphics back then, and they wouldn't hold up in a PC and console game. In today's standards, no, we are very Trekkies are very particular.
I definitely do want to answer that, but do you guys mind if I throw it over to Nate to talk a little bit about the
Go for it.
kind of the like how the Ark Royal, like, and the challenge of like bringing something to life, like within that TMP design language that we'd never seen before. Like we'd never seen a Starfleet carrier before, right? So I'm really curious about like from that challenge there, like what was that like going to Paramount with all these ideas? And I think was Starfleet Command, was that based on the Starfleet Battles board game, like inspired by it?
That's right. It's a video game based on a board game from the 1970s. And yeah, I didn't actually, just to clear the record, I didn't work on the original Starfleet Command. I came on board for Starfleet Command II, which was art directed by Brad Skank, brilliant artist in his own right. But yeah, definitely a story of imposter syndrome. I had never made a 3D model when I joined the team. So many of these stories about what the industry was like in those days are going to seem so archaic because there weren't even like schools to train people to make games yet. So teams that made games tended to be a very interesting agglomeration of like hippies, because there were a lot of hippies who had learned how to program. Like there was this sort of beguiling idea of the internet as this great democratizing force where, like, and there was a kind of a new age undercurrent in a lot of it. And then just like randos, like one of our engineers was a former nuclear engineer on a submarine. And like, and I was trained in painting and drawing, and I sort of came in, and I'm a huge fan of The Wrath of Khan. And I think that probably was the thing that got me the job, was like, that's how easy it was to get a job in games back then.
Like it, therefore you're employed. Okay.
Yes. We have to go back.
Although that clearly, on first day on the job, it was very clear to me that like I was surrounded by real like hardcore trekkers, like people who would get angry if you called them Trekkies, like that level of trekker. And I remember like the testers were in the next room over from me, and they would insult one another loudly in Klingon while they were testing. I'd hear them yell like "Kaplan!"
It's literally like having the Big Bang Theory next door. Then that's what you're saying.
Also in the room I was in, but also next door, yeah. And yeah, but it was a very steep learning curve that they basically, on day one, they were like, well, we know we need to make these new ships, and some of them are going to be in the aesthetic of the movies, which was a thing that hadn't really been explored at the time, right? I mean, I guess the movies were still, they were 15 years old at the time, but still, like, it hadn't been really deeply explored. Most people don't remember there was kind of a Star Trek winter in the 80s where, like, yeah, except for the movies themselves, there wasn't a whole lot else going on. Yeah. So it was a playground, right? It was this, and that was my favorite era of Star Trek. I have since come to really love The Next Generation as well, but at that time, I thought of The Next Generation as like dad stuff. Like that was the stuff my dad was into. And now that I'm a dad, it makes perfect sense. Now I love it. But yes, so Wrath of Khan. Really big. I mean, the Enterprise unmooring scene still just, I was just watching it before this just to like get the chills again, like they're just so beautifully designed. All of the ships in that era are so beautifully designed. The Excelsior, just so good. The Reliant, possibly the best of them all. I don't know. They're just all great. And so coming into this, I had one copy of like the Star Trek Visual Encyclopedia. I forget what it's called exactly, but like I had a book. Again, the internet didn't have much in it at the time in terms of reference material. And Paramount made us like look at this book. That's kind of what they had. We would look at the book and try to, like learn what you could about the architecture of these spacecraft just from pictures of other spacecraft, right? And in very broad approximation, I kind of knew what all the bits and bobs did. But then there was this additional new challenge, and I was warned by the team when I started, like, so we're going to have fighters in this game. You're going to be able to deploy them from carriers, and they're going to attack other ships. And that was so, like, it was almost sacrilege at the time because Star Trek, especially Wrath of Khan, it's a naval story. It's dangerously Star Wars adjacent to have fighters flying around. But they felt like it was a fun game mechanic, so we were just going to go for it. So clean slate. I was a pencil and painting guy, so I got out some paper and started drawing these vehicles and submitting them for review. We had to submit everything up to Paramount to make sure that it passed muster. And I remember the first one I sent up, was very excited about, and they came back with so many notes about like you can't put that there, and are you sure you even know what that is? And you put way too many phasers on it, and like they just everything that as an artist I had been trained to see as just a decorative greeble, right? I mean, I know about the big dish, I know about the sensor dish, I know about that stuff, but I didn't really know what every little doodad on every starship really did, and I had to learn it really fast. So I concepted the Ark Royal among other vehicles, and also the fighters that would be deployed from it, and then got it approved. Then I think the Ark Royal might be the second or third 3D model I've ever made in 3D Studio Max.
Oh wow!
I remember it being a pain in the butt because the numbers. So the way that we divided up the texture atlas was you would just mirror it, right? You just texture one half of the vehicle and then flip it for the other side. But because this had 6 numbered bays on the top, it would say 1, 2, 3 on one side and then 4, 5, 6 on the other. And I was like,
oh no,
I've made my life at pot. Like, what am I supposed to do? I remember. Because it used up so much of the atlas, and the space was so precious, and the polygons were so precious, and we had to manually make levels of detail after all that. All that stuff's automated now and easy, but back then I had to climb uphill both ways to make a starship model. Anyway, I was all over the place on that one, but yeah, it was a really fun time. It was very gratifying to see that ship in the final game and to see a lot of people liked it at the time. And then decades have passed, and I just thought it was lost to in the sands of time. And yeah, to see this thing come back to life in this way. And are the fighters back too, Thomas? Like, is it all back?
It's all back, man.
Yeah,
I don't know. Do you guys, am I going to break anything if I share my screen? Because I have this stuff up here. I don't know if you guys want to take a look.
Go for it. I'll figure it out in post, as they say. We'll fix it in post. Well, I have just had a bit of a brainwave, Thomas, and you're going to hate me for it. I think Star Trek Online needs a new loading screen, which is when you log in, your ship departs from space dock.
You know, it's something I've wanted to do that for a very long time. Uh-oh. Excuse me. Sorry. Hold on. Didn't mean to start a war there, but let's see here. Yeah, can you guys see?
Oh, yeah.
Hold on.
Those fighters are having a bad time.
Yeah, I didn't mean to do that, but anyway.
I was expecting you to have some in dev environment open, not an actual live game.
This is a dev. It's a dev setup, but it's a real map where I can do things. So yeah, so these are the fighters. What did you call these? Do you remember?
Fighters?
Okay. We ended up. I'm a big fan of Space Battleship Yamato, so we ended up calling these Kodai fighters after the main character in that. But I think they were also used in the game Shattered Mirror, where I think they were called Wraith fighters. Unfortunately, I forgot about that before I named them Kodai fighters. But anyway, so these are so I mean these are really distinct, right? Because they have the big deflector dish and the nose. Man, did it take you long to get there, or was that something you came on pretty early?
No, it was. I remember the first version was radically different from this. I think I really had to because there's so many other sci-fi things that have fighters in them, right? Battlestar Galactica and all that stuff. And I think we all just have a kind of space fighter in our head. And I think I had to get that one out the pipe first. And I remember they looked at, I think it did make it to Paramount, and someone looked at it and was like, I mean, this is a cool space fighter, but it's not Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
And so then, back to a blank sheet of paper and trying to ask well, what would a fighter, like a uniquely Star Trek-y fighter, look like? You'd need to be able to look at it and immediately know what universe it's from. It was actually a
Right.
really high bar to hit.
Yep.
But I think in the end, what I ended up doing was just I remember again flipping through that visual encyclopedia, and running across a picture of a phaser, and just sort of like there's a certain kind of sleek design language that's sort of just woven into everything, big and small,
Right.
and feeling like, oh well, maybe. What if I tried, putting some wings on this and then, well, where's the guy sit? And then sort of moving from there. And yeah, it ended up, I mean, I think the deflector dish really is kind of the thing that ultimately makes it click.
Yeah.
But I mean, of course, as an artist, I'm looking at this and immediately thinking, I want to do like a version 3 because I think
I mean, I look at
do a
this and
little
I go,
different.
oh, okay, well, I can see those impulse engines are very Voyager, very Intrepid class, and I'm looking at it and I can see bits of other vessels that are kind of pushed together on it, but they look great.
Yeah, they
Thank you.
do.
Oh, so I'm remembering them when they're about this big on a CRT. So to see them
Right.
this size in high res is lovely.
Yeah. And
I mean,
there's,
Thomas, yeah, do you want to talk? I know that this is absolutely not. If we were to look at an image of the original SFC2 version of this vehicle, you would be able to clearly see that Thomas's team has added an immense amount of additional
Yeah.
fidelity to this thing. Do you want to talk at all about what you had to do there, Thomas?
Yeah, so this model is made by an artist we work with quite a bit, and yeah, I'm sure you guys have heard his name, Tobias Richter. He's a kind of a legend in the sort of Star Trek modeling, starship modeling space. He's contributed models to official CBS productions like the TNG Remastered. I believe they used his Enterprise D model for that.
Yep.
He's done some other stuff, but we've had a great relationship with Tobias for gosh, it's 2018, so
8 years.
7 or 8 years now.
Yeah.
So what's awesome about Tobias is for things like this, like he's such a experienced, passionate Star Trek fan with lots of game dev and modeling experience that I can really I can just say, hey man, I want you to do a high poly Arc Royal from Starfleet Command II, and he's like, all right, and then 2 weeks later it's like, here it is. But I mean those relationships take a long time to build. That's
Yeah.
like it's like 30 years of experience, right? That Tobias has in doing this. But I think we can see that we did pay attention to the textures that you made and that you built on that model, because in there you can kind of extract and extrapolate and take details that were flat and extrude them out a little bit, like like these sections here, and get the big like hangar bay doors. I don't know how much time you had to think about some of this stuff, but do you see these as like one big open bay, or like they fly in here and out there, or vice versa, or something? Or I've always been sort of fascinated by like how these things work, um, so I'm just kind of curious about your thought process too.
I definitely remember talking with the designers about there needing to be a notion of exit and entrance bays. So like, I do not honestly recall which ones are the out and which ones are the in, just looking at it here. I think if you watch the animations in Starfleet Command II, I think they actually maybe respect where they're supposed to come out or go in.
No, nice.
Although that may be a completely false memory. Yeah. But yeah, I do remember a couple of conversations. I mean, obviously, the way that these bays work in the Star Trek universe is that there's some kind of force field that prevents explosive decompression. Again, coming to this conversation directly from Kerbal Space Program, all of my questions right now are about like physical plausibility.
Right,
Like,
right.
but yeah, I believe that the idea was there was a common bay on the upper deck and another common bay on the lower deck, that those were two contiguous spaces, and that probably the lower deck is where things return and the upper deck is where they're deployed.
Yeah, I wanted to show you because we actually built we built a version with the where you could see into the
Oh,
hangars there.
yeah, that's so cool. Does it ever open in the game? Like, do you ever get to see them open?
Well, you can, so we don't have it animated open, but as a player, I can assign this customization and then I can just fly around with the bays open
hangars
if I
open.
want.
Ah,
Yeah.
dude, that's beautiful. Oh, I
Yeah,
love
so-
it. Yeah.
Oops.
I was always I didn't realize until I saw your trailer how much I liked the way that, oh, that looks so nice on the inside. Sorry,
Oh, wow.
being distracted by beauty.
You and me both.
But how much I liked the way that this ship looked from the front and a little bit underneath. Like it has kind of it has a bulk to it that's really
Yeah.
I don't know if it's intimidating or what, but yeah, I really got a little sense of like, oh, it feels military in a like explicitly military in a way that the sort of other ships of its generation, being sort of more exploratory science themed ships tended to be a little less aggressive looking, but this one really feels like it's there to hurt somebody.
It has presence, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's almost like,
Yeah.
if that warps in, you're going to go, shit.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to warp in the opposite direction now.
Yeah.
And I think, Tobias, when he was modeling this, he built a lot of that detail in that gives that sort of layering armored
Yeah.
feel,
Yeah.
right? Like we can see
Yeah.
all those concentric circles, these little like patterns in here. We also added if you look at the original Constitution class, you look at deflector housing, you'll notice there are all these like really subtle paint patterns in there. So we added that. That's one of the things that we did to kind of embellish on the design a bit. Is when you see that blue paint, we added all those patterns in there to kind of flesh it out and
It's
kind of
beautiful.
belie function.
I'm very curious what I thought, or I don't know. I assume the original model has this. The thing looks like a giant cannon to the left of the dish. Do you know what that is? Do you have head cannon as to what that thing is? Is that for
This
ground
thing?
attack?
Yeah,
Oh,
so
they're on the Constitution, I think.
Are
they're
they?
on the Constitution. They're on the Reliant too.
Is that
I've heard
is
them
that a
dis-
torpedo launcher?
No, I've heard it. I mean, I think it's some diagrams have it described as sort of like a secondary deflector.
Ah.
And that's so on the Reliant, since it doesn't have a main deflector at all, that the Reliant uses those as like a secondary deflector apparatus. I think the idea is that like if you don't the main deflector requires so much power that you don't necessarily want to have it turned on all the time. And so maybe you have these smaller deflectors that navigational deflectors that sort of assist that on these bigger ships. But yeah, Tobias did a great job with all this stuff here, the little phaser turrets, and then like if you go in,
You've got the
you've
rib.
got the little landing bays in the back and everything, and it was so much fun to see the ship come to life. I'm so pleased to have it in stow. One of the things that's funny is that people complain. Some players complained about the numbers, like 4 should be in the front, and I'm like, no, that's how it was.
Oh no, it's
Yeah.
my fault.
I don't know. I mean,
So if you have
Direct post
problems,
email.
you can write to Nate 123 A Street. No.
I mean, that is
like-
100% like that's just 25-year-old art student having to make a call.
well, now I can tell them.
It is accurate.
Yes.
Well, I don't know. It seemed like it was a choice, and so I didn't want to. I try when we do things like this. I mean, philosophically, right? When you're up-resing a thing like this, the thing that I tell the artists that I work with is we want to keep the spirit of the original thing, and so it needs to feel like you're just taking a camera and you're just like bringing it into focus, right? Like we're not going to totally change the layout or the design. We're not going to add a bunch of stuff that wasn't there in the silhouette. Like if you squint, you shouldn't be able to tell that it's not the original, right? And
Yeah.
so that's the so preserving details like that, even if it's kind of silly or we don't really know why it was like that, but it's important to me because like, let's be honest, like we're making a Star Trek game. A lot of that is about nostalgia. A lot of what we do is catering to that. But I think you have to understand that all of these little idiosyncrasies are important in preserving and reigniting that feeling in people they get of like, oh, I love that game. Like, and you never know what little thing is important to people. Like, obviously sometimes we'll make changes and I think, oh, that's fine, nobody's going to care about that. And then somebody's like, how dare you? The lines were red and you made them blue. It's like, all right, sorry. I'll do better next time.
I think there's a little bit. I just want to be sure though that we don't undersell the amount of craftsmanship that has gone into this newer version, because I appreciate how much like loyalty there is to the sort of original concept, but there are so many beautiful little touches in this model. Like this is such a work of art. This was hard work. I can see someone poured a lot of real love into this.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. And when I say that, Tobias comes back 2 weeks later, that Tobias is a hard, he works very hard, and he spent a lot, he worked very hard in those 2 weeks to get this done. But I think my hope is that people took away from that I have a lot of faith in Tobias's skill and his sort of immersion in the Star Trek fandom, that he knows how to generate something like this.
But also, it means that Tobias had about 3 hours sleep in that 2 weeks.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, probably,
yeah. And and we've got, he looked at the kind of the panel lines and cut those in. This will make sense to you, Nate, but and for anybody who's a bit sort of game art or technically minded at home, the way that Star Trek Online does our textures is we don't do what's called a high poly bake, where you actually, so a lot of game models, you actually model it twice. You make a big high poly model with tons of detail, and then you bake all of that stuff down into textures like normal maps, height maps, AO maps, and all this stuff. And then you apply those high detail textures to a lower detailed 3D model. But on Star Trek Online, we don't do that. We use what's called trim maps. So our models we model all of our ships to kind of the final in-game resolution, which these days is like 60 to 80,000 triangles, and then unwrap them to an existing set of trim maps. So all of our ships from a certain era use the same texture sheet. And so that requires a lot of effort, because you have to plan out the model to cut in the panel lines in the right place and then unwrap those panel lines individually to be the way that they, to be in the location you want them to be, the style that you want. So it's a lot of effort. The reason we do that is for customization, so that we can have things where you can go in and if you're like, well, I like the look of the Ark Royal, but I want a TNG refit version, then you can go in the ship tailor and you can take your ship. Here's your Ark Royal, and then you can just change the material here, and now you have a material. This is like, and then we can go in and we can change the nacelles.
The Dark Royal, yes.
Dark Royal.
Yep. And so now you have an Ark Royal that has survived, the last 50 years of service and been updated to but like us doing the trim UV mapping is lets us do stuff like this. It wouldn't.
I have
be
to say that looks
otherwise.
really nice in the Constitution 3 texture.
Oh yeah, let's see that here. Yep, there's that.
Oh,
look at that, beautiful.
And then
go ahead.
Yeah, like one of the fun things too about working in Star Trek Online is the other variants that we get to do. And so part of the process of bringing the Ark Royal into the game wasn't just, faithfully adapting the original, but also interpreting, okay, well, what is a version of this ship that has been reimagined for like the Picard era or the Stowe 25th century era? And so that's what we did with the Kitty Hawk here.
Yeah, look at that.
Yeah.
I have a question about this, though.
Mm-hmm.
Why are all the nacelles the same way up?
Purely
because I would have thought having almost going Prometheus and flipping the top ones or something.
Right. We looked at that and we almost did, but then we looked at the Stargazer, which is this is kind of, in the same family.
Yep.
And the Stargazer didn't flip her nacelles. So
No.
we felt that it was it made more sense to do it this way for this specific era of ship. Now, theoretically, we could go back and make an option of where the nacelles are flipped if we really wanted to, but no, this just for this capturing the specific era with the Sagan class and the Constitution 3 and the Duderstadt, all that stuff from Picard, this felt like the right choice.
Yeah,
and having the leading edges of the nacelles follow the same tangent line is so choice. Like Art Brain is very happy looking at that.
Right? Yeah, exactly. You have
the
this,
OCD is happy.
right?
Yeah.
Gorgeous, beautiful, beautiful design.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, this was designed by Jamie Armstrong Hughes. Did the concept art for this, and then Tobias also modeled this for us as well.
I love the underside's beautiful too. I mean, once again, I guess I'm just a big fan of the bellies of these things.
Yeah, I like them, and I think one of the reasons I love the Ark Royal so much is because of the keel, right? Like it feels like a boat, and I mentioned Yamato earlier. I'm just a sucker for boats in space.
Yep.
So, and it's not just the keel on the Ark Royal, is it? It's also the bridge, the kind of like aircraft carrier, conning tower, right? That always made me just super excited. I thought that was the coolest thing ever, and one of the things I really loved about it, that you could tell it was an aircraft carrier kind of because of you saw the big bays, right? But the thing that sold it for me was always this bridge section.
That's great.
Yeah.
I think, I would have expected some controversy around putting something that nautical on the top of it. Maybe it snuck through because it was too unprecedented. The only thing I remember being a little bit of a lightning rod that we had to go back and forth on a couple times. At the time that this ship was designed, there were no other examples of starships that had paired impulse engines like this. And I remember getting a note back saying, like, you can't put them in pairs like that. Like somebody had a theory like they would like destroy each other or rip themselves apart or something. And I remember thinking, well, I don't know, like it just looked cool. I mean, I guess so many of these things are about rule of cool, and then they have to be justified after the fact.
Right.
And you have to kind of decide what you're going to fight about or what you're not going to fight about. Now, obviously, we did flip the nacelles correctly on our version. Can't get everything perfect, Thomas. I'm sorry.
But let's face it, it's another ship with 2 warp cores because it's the only way that you could get 4 nacelles to work.
Exactly.
The impulse engines, did it blow up? No. So it's fine.
Exactly. Looks like it's flying to me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So in the I want to say it is a bundle, isn't it? Is it a bundle? Yes, in the Legacy Starship bundle, there's also 2 other ships. We have I've got the list here because I can never remember their names. We have the Okinawa Pilot Raider, which again is another gorgeous looking ship. And where is it? The Warden Multi-Mission Temporal Cruiser.
That's right.
That is also as part of this pack.
Yeah.
I have to say, I do like the Proxima, though. I'm a sucker for the Proxima.
I'm a fan of the Proxima. Yeah, same. I am a sucker for that.
Star Trek Legacy was such a great game when it came out. I'm so annoyed that they never made it backwards compatible on the console, so it's dead. Unless you've got an Xbox 360 kicking around, you're never going to be able to play it.
Well, that's why Star Trek Online is here to bring these ships back.
Well,
exactly.
If I remember correctly, Star Trek Legacy has now gone into public domain because it's so old and the copyright has expired on it or something, so you can now easily find the 2 gigabyte ISO and stick it on Windows.
Oh, wow.
But it doesn't run on Windows 11, annoyingly. So I need to boot up a Windows 8 VM or something so I can get around to playing it again. Oh, dear. So, Thomas, do you have a favorite variant of any of the 3 ships in the pack?
I mean, I have to say that And if it helps, I can share my screen again because I have all these guys up that we can talk about. Um, my favorite is definitely has to be, the Okinawa. Oh no, and I'm shooting it.
Yeah, you know.
Um, Here we go. I think I need to. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, the Okinawa right here. This is from the original Starfleet Command, I believe. I'm not actually sharing, am I?
Oh, there we go.
There we go. This is from the original Starfleet Command. This is in that game, it was a frigate. We made it a pilot raider instead, which means something very specific about its abilities and what it can do. But in Starfleet Command, it was a frigate, which just meant that it was the smallest type of capital ship that you could field. There's something about super sleek and compact about this. I really love the kind of the underdog nature of it. It's not the biggest, baddest ship in the fleet, right? But it's a workhorse. It's clearly something that they had to build a ton of because they had to do customs patrol and they had to do anti-piracy stuff and they had to do fleet screening elements and all this like stuff that you need ships for, but they can't all be the biggest and best ship. And something about that I thought was cool, and I thought this was a great version of that for Star Trek. It set you have the turn off the UI here. You have the Constitution class, the heavy cruiser, and you have the Miranda class, which I kind of see as a light cruiser or battle cruiser, and then you have this guy as the frigate, which is kind of at the bottom in there. So it kind of shows the progression of scale in a really cool way. So this version, the Okinawa here, showed up in Starfleet Command. This is a pretty faithful recreation, but there's an amazing, he's a technical artist in games, but he does a lot of 3D models of, Star Wars and Star Trek and stuff just for fun. His name is Howie Day. And he made an amazing high poly, super high detailed, sort of like movie film effects quality version of the Okinawa. And I reached out to him asking if we could use his interpretation in Star Trek Online, and so and he graciously agreed to let us do that. And so this is another Tobias Richter model, but built based on Howie's interpretation. And so there's a lot of really cool stuff in here.
I love those nacelles. They kind of give me almost the front half is it's a phaser blended with the motion picture back end. Something about them just looks really cool.
Yeah, the nacelles are cool. I love the little talk about space boats, right? This is another example of that, where you have the kind of the keel down here. You've got the torpedo tube blended into the hull really nicely. Howie has a lot of really, really nice tiny little details here when you zoom in on the hull, and then Tobias recreated that really faithfully in our model. So I'm really happy with how this one turned out.
I love the back of the nacelles when you've got the Cadillac fins.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
On the back, it just gives it this hot rod look.
That's my favorite part of it too.
Stunning. Yeah, it's absolutely
stunning. And by hot rod, we're not talking about Star Trek 09. We're not going that kind.
No. Proper hot rod. This is the Cadillac of Starfleet.
Right. And then I want to draw another attention to detail thing that Howie did, and then Tobias faithfully replicated, which is he even put in the little spotlights for like all these, the motion picture airships. They have all those spotlights on like the registry numbers and stuff. It's a little easier to see on the bottom. We have to fake them with alpha cards because we didn't when the game came out. It's 15 years old, and we didn't have an infinite lighting budget to work with then, so we couldn't actually build lights into our ships the way we would have wanted to. But anyway, but you can see here he's actually like carved in little spots. So this spotlight lights up the the Starfleet Delta there, stuff like that is just really, really fun.
It's the little details.
Yeah,
it's the
that
tiny
going in there.
details.
Do the more recent eras of starship design not have the spotlights? Did they get rid of that?
Not really. There might have they might do it on like the main registry number, but yeah, even the Enterprise D didn't really do that.
We got to bring it back.
Yeah.
Who has the power but you, Thomas?
We do bring it back a little bit. We have them. So this is we'll go over to we were talking about the Proxima earlier. This is the Pollux, which is the STO 25th century. This is our own sort of reinterpretation of the Proxima, and so we've got a little bit of spotlight action going on there. We can probably add more, but you're right. We need more.
I'll tell you what, I think they are probably my favorite 25th century nacelles as well.
They are so nice.
So this is the
oh, there she is.
Yeah, the TMP era Proxima.
That's my favorite.
This was done by Keen Sin, and I think Jamie Armstrong did some concept support on this. Keen is a big fan of Legacy. That was the game that he grew up playing, and so he was very excited to get the Proxima into STO. And then
the only thing I find about the Proxima is it's almost like the nacelles are almost too small.
Mm-hmm.
I think,
well, yeah, because you got the giant pontoons and the
massive ship, tiny nacelles. They just don't look quite within proportion, but that's just of the ship design in general. But
he was not built for speed.
No, she was not. For comfort, no. That's my favorite.
These variations are so much fun.
I have to say,
how many different generations are there?
So for this bundle, we did 3 versions for each ship. So each ship has a original series version like this, and then the film version, the TMP version, and then the futuristic, sleek STO version.
Oh man, that's so cool! Wow.
And what's fun is that you can swap between them all. So like if you're like I like the saucer of this version, but I want the nacelles or whatever from this other version.
Just exploded.
you can swap parts.
How does that look when you do that? Is that
it looks better for some ships than others, but that's our philosophy is just sort of let the players hang themselves with the rope that we give them. Like if they want to make a weird looking ship, you worked on Kerbal, you know how that goes.
By the way, that is the title of the video.
Let the
Mike and Michael let the players hang themselves.
Let the players hang themselves with Thomas Marrone and Nate. Yeah, I agree with that.
Oh man,
I have certainly seen some very weird creations when I warp into Earth space dock, and I'm like, okay, that's a choice. That is definitely a choice.
I just look at it and go, why?
All right, so we're gonna get ourselves into the Proxima here. And so this is also designed by Jamie Armstrong Hughes. If you're familiar with Bill
Hughes from Bill Krause, because those
yes, absolutely. I was literally about to mention Bill Krause.
Okay, I was going to say that the fronts of those nacelles are very Krause.
Yeah, and it was fun working on these TOS designs and reinterpreting them, because I think a lot of people look at the original Enterprise, and if you don't look at it very closely, you can think like, oh, that's too simple or that's boring. But the wonderful thing is that they've recently restored the original Enterprise model, which is 11 feet long, by the way.
Yep.
The shooting miniature for Star Trek: The Original Series. The Smithsonian did a very extensive restoration of that model. So there are tons of great high-res pictures of it online now. And when you really look at it closely, you'll see a lot of really cool mid-century modern detailing on it, inspired by cars or jets or just the sort of the style of that era. And it's subtle stuff. It is admittedly subtle, but I think there's a lot more to work with in that design language than people realize. And I think that Bill Krause, who's a scale modeler who's actually done some work for Star Trek, Star Trek Picard. He's done a lot of images for the Ships of the Line calendar. He gets that, and he pioneered a lot of that, where he'll make a starship that you can clear that it's like the nacelles, but they're like P-51, the nose of the P-51 Mustang, right? They have kind of like that feeling to them, and so we owe a lot to Bill on our TOS versions of these ships, getting that kind of simple but sleek, like mid-century modern look. So
just going to put this out that we need a Bill Krause pack.
Yeah, I mean, that would be cool. I would be down for that. We'd have to figure out the rights and everything, but that's I would certainly love to see it.
I can think about four of his designs. I go, yeah, I can happily have one of them.
Right. So these are all the variants, in like the kind of with everything together, but if you go over here to the advanced tab, you can start mixing and match. And this is probably one of the most goofy. The Proxima is the most interesting ones. So what we did with the Proxima was we actually let you choose the hulls independently of each other.
I can foresee this.
Yeah. So if you want to mix and match, you totally can. And then you go up here and you change up the saucer.
You don't have individual nacelle control, though. You can have
not individual nacelle control, but you can do the hulls. Nacelles have to stay matched for warp physics reasons.
This is going to be like if a pack lead was in charge. Like, it's just everything's all over the place.
Go in here and change up the material, and so it's a lot of fun though. You can do a lot of fun stuff,
and then it gets even wackier when you put patterns on top of it,
right?
But also the asymmetry is like, if when you described it verbally, I was out, and now that I'm seeing it, I'm back in.
It's one of those things where it seems like I wouldn't ever do it, but that doesn't mean I shouldn't let other people do it if they want to, right? Like,
I've got to admit, guys, it's warming. It is warming to me.
Right?
Yeah, it's very utilitarian.
If both holes were the same, I think that would look quite cool.
Let's see here.
The texture is going such a long way to unifying it. You can get away with a lot more stylistic variation when the textures are matching.
Right, exactly.
That's cool. I like that.
And that's what our trim map system gets us, right? Is you can take all these weird mismatched pieces, and but when you start to put them all together, it still kind of feels like one ship, because
I like that.
Yeah,
it's
cool.
all.
Yeah.
You can tell that's definitely been in service for a really long time.
Right. It tells a story, right? It's been overhauled. It was brought into dry dock for a while. Yeah, it's great.
Or it was damaged, and you know what? The hull's fine, and we just happen to have this saucer laying around that we can just swap it out with.
We've restore modded it. That's what we've done.
Right. Yeah. So that's the Proxima. I'm really pleased with how this guy turned out in general, and it's fun to see all the weird variants that people make. And I think that's, I think there's kind of I don't know how to put this without sounding like an old fart, so I guess I'll just yell at clouds. But there's so many amazing, talented concept artists out now making really cool spaceships and stuff, but so many of them, I think, are kind of scared to be weird with the art that they make.
Yeah.
And so it's, it's like, oh, that's a really cool rectangle. Like when you boil it down, right, the silhouette, right? And that's one of the beautiful things about working in Star Trek, is that you have the silhouette is forced on you. Like you are forced to have a distinct silhouette by the nature of the saucer and then the cells and the engineering hull. And so you can see that and immediately you know that's a Star Trek ship and you remember it because it is weird. It's like, why would you ever build a ship like this? If you had starting with a blank piece of paper, but Matt Jeffries, who designed the original Enterprise, that's what he cared about, was getting that distinct silhouette, because Gene Roddenberry told him this thing is going to go really fast past the camera. And it's not going to be like on strings. It's not going to have, rocket flames coming out the back like the Commander Cody stuff. It's going to be something really different. And so Matt Jeffries had to okay, well, how do I build something that is going to read at, super high speeds? And that's how he came to, that's why it has distinct pieces that are connected together with thin little struts and stuff, because he wanted you to see the saucer and he wanted you to see the cylinders of the engines and the hull. And he needed to be able to read that all really fast, which ended up, kind of stumbling into a design that was iconic because it was so easy to read as, just a simple black and white graphic or at a distance or, very small amongst other things. And that's something that when you're designing anything, I think Matt Groening called it the silhouette principle, right? Like that, when you look at famous cartoon characters like Bart Simpson or Mickey Mouse, or logos like the McDonald's arches or the Nike swoosh, that's all all you need is the outline. That's all you need to know what it is. And the same is applied to spaceships. You look at the Millennium Falcon or the Star Destroyer or the Enterprise, right? You just need the outline and you know what you're looking at. And that's how you design something that's interesting and memorable. And it needs to be a little weird. So anyway, that's a long-winded defense of the Proxima and its dual hold weirdness.
In other words, embrace the weird is what you're saying.
Yeah, let's embrace it. Yeah.
You know what's really obvious, just hearing you talk about this stuff, Thomas, is that you are extremely well informed about your forebears, that you're like a member of a continuous lineage of custodians or stewards of this very precious IP. And I loved hearing you talk about the design language of the original miniature. I think a lot of the people who get entrusted with something like this aren't necessarily students of the history of the thing. And I feel very lucky that we have you in particular kind of looking over all this. You feel like a really, really reliable owner for all of these things.
Thanks. It's very kind of you to say. It's something that it means a lot to me. I mean, I could show you the weathered Star Trek encyclopedia, right, that I wore down. I grew up consuming all of it and learning as much as I could. I don't know why. I don't know why I fixated on all this stuff. It's probably because I loved trains when I was a kid. And so at some point I graduated from trains to starships. But it's I think if you're going to be involved in something that is, I think, as culturally powerful as Star Trek, I think it's great to see where you fit in and to honor that. And I see you as part of that legacy too, Nate, right? Like the work that you did on Starfleet Command. I think it holds up. We bring it into Stowe and everybody loves it. And even people who didn't play those games, they see the stuff in our trailers and oh, that's awesome. I never played Starfleet Command, but I really want the Ark Royal because it just looks really cool. And so it is
a really cool ship.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I did want to ask you though, Thomas, you've been really, I think, looking after a lot of sort of legacy content or, polishing up an existing legacy. Is there a part of you that would like to be given the keys to the kingdom and to envision what an entirely new generation of Star Trek mecha might look like and feel like?
I think, I can, if the two mics want us to go into that a little bit.
Go for it. Yeah.
I have had the opportunity to do that with Star Trek Online because the game storyline actually takes place kind of after most everything else, right? So Star Trek Online takes place in the 25th century about 10 years after Picard. Originally, we would say, because Star Trek Online existed before Picard did, so we would say, oh yeah, it takes place 30 years after Voyager. And so we would be kind of exploring the 25th century where we haven't, you didn't, until Picard, you had never seen anybody talk about that era or show things from that era of Star Trek, that post Voyager, post TNG era, post Nemesis era, we would say, because that was Nemesis was the last time you spent in that era canonically until the new shows like Picard and Lower Decks and Prodigy started up. So, it's funny that you mentioned. I'm going to fly over. Let's see, where is there? I am. I'm going to just change my costume really quick here. You mentioned the phaser, using a phaser as inspiration for your fighters. So this is the Andromeda class ship that I designed pretty early in my career here, and this is a kind of what is a 25th century, like post TNG Galaxy class. What does that look like? And so I've gotten to do this a couple times where I've got to put my stamp on the future of Star Trek ships, and some of them actually did end up, they used them in Picard for some of the fleet, Starfleet, which is really cool.
That's the dream, man. It's canon once it's in a show, right?
Yep,
yeah, absolutely. And so this ship didn't, but her sister did. But I mean, I wanted to show off the Andromeda because I think this is one of the examples of that kind of the future of Starfleet, like you're talking about. And then the cells here are pretty much ripped exactly from the the Wrath of Khan phaser.
Yep.
I don't know if you remember what that looks like, but that's what these the cells are. So when you said that, I was like, oh man, I did that too.
Well, you did say you had that encyclopedia. Basically, all Star Trek content comes from that one 1999 book.
Exactly. But so for the Andromeda, one of the things I wanted to do was like, could I make a version of the galaxy inspired by, when the Enterprise D warps out and it sort of stretches out?
Yep.
Yeah.
Like let's freeze frame. I always thought that was super cool as a kid. So like, I want to freeze that in time and make that the ship. And so that's why it's got this like super long neck. And then the cells are kind of trailing back behind the ship. You can see the ship sort of like being stretched out, so it feels like great. It's going super fast while it's standing still.
But the thing I like about the Andromeda class is you could almost backtrack it even further and make it even earlier. And if you kind of not dumb it down, but it would be very easy to tweak to put it in the Discovery era, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could totally see that. So yeah, and we got to do that, with the warden over here, just to get back to the bundle a little bit for since we're kind of talking about all that. But this is the warden, which is a 25th century STO era version of a ship that we did called the Ranger originally. Let's see here, really quick, type. Oh, all right. Sorry, I put the wrong. Pardon me. There we go. Okay, so this was the original ship that we did for Star Trek Online's. Like, we did a original series era expansion, and we did a lot of new ships in that era based on the 60 show. And the Ranger was a really popular one. It's almost like a TOS Akira kind of, or a TOS NX type ship. With the kind of the roll bar and the cells like this. And so we had this ship in the game for a while, but when it came to the Timeless Legacy bundle, it was like, oh, well, I want to do a motion picture era for this, and then we should also do a STO 25th century version of it. But we also, the other thing we did was remaster the original TOS era model. And so we added a lot of like mid-century modern things inspired by like, Thunderbird, old Thunderbird cars and stuff. MiG MiG-29s and or no, I think it was like a MiG-17 or a MiG-15 or something. I don't remember. But there's a lot of stuff from that era, not just of like ships, but also like cars and planes, and you have to I mean, I think the important thing is if you're working in an IP like Star Trek, if you get I love being referential, and I love doing things like bringing the Ark Royal into Stowe and looking at other things that have come before, like you said. But at the same time, it can become incestuous if you don't look at the things that inspired the original thing.
Yeah.
Right. So it's important to look beyond the other Star Trek ships and look at 1950s fighter jets, or look at even furniture or locomotives or cars, or all of these other things that the people who made the designs that you want to interpret, or you want to ape or imitate. You have to look at the things that they were looking at, and not just copy what they did exactly. So that's something that was important for us too when updating or rebuilding some of these ships in this era.
Can we see the underside of that guy too?
Yeah.
While we're looking at him, I'm always curious. Oh yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of like a pocket Enterprise, right? A pocket Constitution, where you've got the hull slotted in there.
Yeah.
This was the ship was originally designed by Hector Ortiz. And that model was updated by Ramon Matas. Ramon also built this model, and with Jamie Armstrong Hughes worked on designing this, updating this design to the motion picture era. So we just call this the Ranger 2, which the idea being it was a refit of the original TOS era Ranger.
It fits with Miranda almost perfectly.
Right. Yeah. You could see how this is kind of like somewhere between the Miranda and the Constitution.
Yeah.
In tonnage. And we also we stole the nacelles from the Shangri-La, from Bill Cross's Shangri-La, which we recently added to the game, but we just felt like they fit in really well with this ship as this fast battle cruiser kind of look to it. And then we'll go on to, so again, talking about the Star Trek Online era. So now that you know the lineage, so this is again designed by Jamie Armstrong Hughes. This is the Warden. This is the 25th century version of the ship. And so you can see one of the things that we've added that's been really consistent through all the Stowe era stuff is this high contrast black and white paneling. That's something that we've done since the Enterprise F. And then we have some really strong, sleek shapes going on. We use some Lumi, but we try to not go too overboard with it, but you get some nice little picks of lighting and windows and stuff. And then you have, I think it's, with, you talk about futuristic spaceships, there's a balance between feeling organic and sleek versus you want it to still feel, especially for Starfleet ships, it needs to feel constructed and have a function, right? And so you're always riding that line of like hot rod, but also Navy warship, right? And so that's one of the things that I think we try to do with this era of Star Trek ship. The other thing that I say, that I try to encourage our modelers when they're building these ships is to remember that it's a spaceship, but what would it look like if it was a 6-foot or 8-foot long miniature at a workshop in ILM? What kind of things would those guys have done to it to add scale? And how would that scale feel relative to the rest of the ships? Because I think when you're working in CG, it's how you perceive scale is really, really different than if you're working on a thing that's 8 feet long in front of you and you have these tiny, tiny sheets of sheet styrene plastic, right? And you're cutting off these little things. You're putting these little layers on, and those tiny layers of plastic and those tiny pipes from all those kit bash model kits. Those things add skill in a way that I think a lot of like CG original models don't really accomplish, because you're looking at something that's just on your desktop and you're like, oh, that bevel looks pretty good, but it's like huge. Or the default values for all the bevels and the stuff in 3ds Max, for example, like it can make the model not really, it doesn't feel like it's 1,000 feet long the way that I think some of those practical miniatures did. So trying to reverse engineer that, like, why do those feel so good and so big, and how can we emulate that in the work that we're doing, is another thing that we're constantly trying to like figure out and implement.
Can I also just add about this particular style that we're looking at right here? I've always, another big part of my childhood was Macross and Robotech.
Oh yeah.
And one of the things I really loved about that aesthetic was how predominant caution striping, or the sort of cautionary markings were. I love a no step. I love an air intake, blocker, that sort of thing. And I see that woven. It's actually kind of funny when you think about the scale of this vehicle, like that they paint the phaser banks yellow, like don't go here. Or like, or the thin red lines, like it's what are the like the little sort of slightly yellow squares that are sort of, yeah, those guys. What are those?
Those are the lifeboats. So
The
those are
lifeboats.
the escape pod hatches, yeah.
But the little kind of red bracketing elements
Right.
around those, all of those touches are so gorgeous. And they really, I don't know, it's very tasty. It makes me want a physical model of this.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You never know. Fahrenheit might indulge us with that at some point.
Right. Well, I think they are making models of some of the Picard, the ships that showed up in Picard. So
Yeah,
we see that. I mean, if you zoom in, we have. It's really cool that you mentioned the decals, because when you zoom in, you can see that we actually place a lot of them.
Yep.
And it's something that a lot of players, I don't think, notice overtly, but it's definitely that level of detail is something that you feel.
Yeah.
There's a certain verisimilitude, or just sort of like that feels right, that there are all these little like dots and squares and things, and who knows what they're for, but on a machine this big, like exactly the no step stuff. I mean, one of the things I love to do is go to aviation museums, and like I'll take a couple pictures of the whole plane, but most of the time I'm like looking at those labels, like no paint, or like no step, or stand clear, all that stuff. And I'm taking pictures of all those labels because I just think it fascinates me, like all the different thought that goes into making these big, powerful machines. And those decals are, I think, an important part of that. This was actually something they did on the canon models of the Voyager and the Enterprise E. A lot of these decals are ripped just straight from what they did on those models, and then we have them in a texture sheet, and we just sort of place them around on our ships where they look good. But noticing that how good those miniatures looked and how much personality that adds to it is something that it made me realize how important it was to put on our models too.
But it makes it feel
It
real.
makes them look authentic. Yeah.
Because I mean,
Yeah,
there is no such thing as a fighter jet without any markings on it, for example.
Mm.
So why
Right.
wouldn't these have those things on it? Because I think if they were missing, it would be like, it looks great, but there's just something that's just not quite right, and you can't quite put your finger on it. And I think it's just those little details, those little decals make all the difference.
We know health and safety in the 21st century is bad enough. In the 25th century, you're going to have an arrow that says, this is a torpedo tube.
That is such a UK-centric
Yes, absolutely.
Here in America, we're like, I think we got rid of health and safety as a concept sometime recently. So
the British are in charge of Starfleet paint schemes, okay?
Oh, there you go. Us all.
Yeah,
this is great. More of that stuff for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is the 25th century version of the Okinawa. So this is Hector Ortiz designed this guy. Tobias modeled it for us, and for this one, we wanted to the other two versions. So this is the TOS version, right? And this is very Bill Krause inspired.
I'm just gonna say it's very Bill.
Right. Yeah. The sleek nacelles. And then we'll go back to the original Okinawa here. So it was fun kind of going through the eras with this one. This is actually the TOS version of this was in a comic book, an IDW comic book called Star Trek Crew by John Byrne. And so it was great for us to bring that to life as part of this, this whole bundle. And Jamie did the concept art for this TOS version, and they did a great job bringing all that mid-century modern detailing into it to kind of give it some life. And I'm really pleased with how all these ships turned out. But I wanted to talk about the Alameda, that's what we're calling this one. And the Alameda is, it has a different shaped saucer. So when we do all these different variants, it's important to me that each variant has an identity and changes the silhouette a little bit, so that if you do want to mix and match, that each variant offers a different look to it, right? And so for the Alameda here, that meant going kind of a little Y-wing with it.
So awesome. I mean, you're in so much trouble, but I love it so much.
But to be fair, this shape saucer we've seen before in Star Trek Online, so it's not too dissimilar. It's not like it's alien.
Right. Yeah, we do have other ships that are, and I think in canon too, there are Starfleet ships that aren't quite rounded saucers that have, and I like it because it implies that there are different manufacturers, there are different shipyards with different philosophies and different sort of signature shapes. And so once you build a library of these ships have kind of rectangular saucers, and these ships have oval saucers, and these ships have round saucers, then people can kind of world build that in their head of those are from, those ships were built on Earth, and those ships were built on Vulcan or Andor or whatever. And that's just fun. I love the world building part of it too, not just the visual part, but digging into why did they build them that way? Or, what was the thing here? What was the function? And being able to believe in it is important to me. Yeah. And so all of that works together.
Faith again.
It's a gorgeous ship.
I want to see that keel. Show me that keel.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah. Beautiful. It's got a little, almost like a submarine conning tower thing going on down there.
Yeah.
I've just clocked. There's no deflector dish.
Yeah. It's right there.
Oh, okay. It's there. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry.
No, I'm glad that was there. I didn't remember that was there until I saw it, and I just
they would have had to have gone back to the dry dock.
So I think on this one there isn't actually a deflector dish at all, right? On the original Okinawa, Howie, when he made his interpretation of it, he added these two little blue things, and those were meant to be small little deflectors,
micro deflectors.
Yeah.
Deflectors.
So yeah. So I think we've gone through all the different variants in the bundle.
Yep.
Do you guys have more questions?
Is there a TOS version of the Ark Royal? I didn't see. Is there?
Oh
really
no, so the Ark Royal was in the bundle we did at the beginning of the year, and so we only did the 2 variants for that. But I'd love to do that. I think that would be a lot of fun. So maybe someday we will. But I wanted to have it up here, right, so we could talk about it with you.
Sure.
I think
that would be great.
They're all great. They're all really good ships, and I have yet to fly them all. I have them all, but I've yet to fly them all, and I'm really looking forward to playing with these.
Well, I'm on a console, so I'm very much looking forward to August.
I want to say 17th off the top of my head, but it might be the 27th. Let me just double.
I think it's the 27th.
I think it's
so.
Yeah, 27th.
August, it gives me time to buy more spaces for ships because I am running out for the amount.
I think the bundle does come with ship slots for what it's worth.
Oh, well, you see, there we go. They're already accommodating my ever decreasing.
What are you currently flying?
Ships. Yes, everything. Currently I'm flying a Shangri-La class.
Oh,
yes.
So I'm
the USS Drake. I've got a Connie 3 due to start, Shangri-La, Typhon, and an Ark Royal at the moment.
I'm swapping between the Discovery because I've always got a soft spot for Discovery. Plus, it can take a punch, and an Enterprise F, or the Odyssey class, and a Connie 3, which is the USS Artemis.
Nice.
Because I can't have.
We have far too many ships. No, we're not allowed. Unless it's got a Z. Unless it's got a Z in it. I have a question. So if you could bring any obscure Trek ship into Star Trek Online, what would it be and why?
Well, I'm kind of done now that I've got the Ark Royal and the Okinawa. Those are the 2 that I wanted. So
easy question. Okay.
Yeah. Eagle-eyed observers who watched the trailer that we did for this bundle, for the Timeless Legacy bundle, will note that we made a model for the Antares freighter. And I've always wanted to get that in. We made that model specifically for the trailer, but we'll probably find a way to get it into players' hands at some point.
Yes.
And so that freighter was originally seen in Star Trek: The Animated Series, and then a long time ago, Mike Okuda sent me some orthographic drawings he did. It's like, if you ever want to put this in stow, here's some reference. And so when Mike Okuda sends you something like that, you're like, oh, well, now I got to put it in stow.
Yeah,
you don't have a choice in the matter.
when Okuda says it, you do it.
Yeah.
I have a recommendation for a very obscure ship.
Yeah.
The Ring Ship Enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
The original chronology. Yeah.
Yeah, that ship is really cool. I have wanted to bring that into stow as well. I don't know what we would do with it, right? Because it's small. It is isn't it pre NX-01?
It is.
So,
it is. Yeah.
I don't know. We'd have to figure out something.
Well, next year
there was a version.
I was going to say next year.
Yeah, there was a version on Lower Decks though. Yeah.
Oh yeah, true.
And next year's Star Trek's 60th anniversary. So if there is a time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, I Thomas will remember that.
If not, you can send your complaint letters to Thomas 123.
I'll take them. You're already sending your stuff my way, so I'll just forward it to me.
Guys, look, thank you so much for going through this. It's an incredible bundle. If you play Star Trek Online on PC, it is available now. For those poor people who have console, you will have to wait until August the 27th, and it will be available then. To both our guests, Thomas and Nate, thank you guys so much for coming on. This has been great. It's been really cool to kind of deep dive these ships and hear the stories from way back when, shall we say, with Nate. So guys, look, thank you so much for freeing up your time for us this afternoon. I was going to say this evening, but it's this evening for me, this afternoon for you. For everybody watching and listening at home, remember you can catch up more Clonestar Podcast at our website, clonestarpodcast.com, and on all of the socials and on our Patreon. But until next time, live long and prosper.